Namaste. Um, Fantasy in psychoanalysis is central to its discourse. And exploring this area today, we have with us our uh, guide and our psychoanalysis consultant, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya. Let me even mention this is a part of our ongoing series of psychoanalysis and philosophy, and the title is Central Fantasy. Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
Sir, what is fantasy and how central is the concept to psychoanalysis?
Psychoanalysis says that the human mind works in the zone of reality and in the zone of fantasy. There is no human being who can always operate in the zone of reality or always operate in the zone of fantasy. We all switch between the two. When we are dealing with the doctor, the lawyer, the chartered accountant, the hospital, we are dealing with reality. We are dealing in the realistic zone of the mind, which is very reality oriented, very practical, very objective. And when we are dealing with art, literature, imagination, creativity, we are dreams, we are dealing with the area of fantasy. We are in the zone of fantasy. So all of us are in both the zones, at times in the zone of reality, at times in the zone of fantasy. And in general, it is more pleasurable to be in the zone of fantasy than to be in the zone of reality. And often we get too much of reality and we want to shift into the zone of fantasy. It is like if you're taking care of a sick person and you get an hour of leave, you want to go and watch YouTube. You want to see something fantastical. So fantasy in that sense is very relieving, very refreshing, very pleasurable. But fantasy also has the other element of pathology. Fantasy can also get traumatic. Fantasy can also give you very negative and traumatic feelings. So just as reality can give you good and bad experiences, fantasy can also give you good and bad experiences. And we live in both the zones. It is interesting to see how the two are related. When we are in the zone of reality, and if we call the activity to be thinking, realistic thinking, and when we are in imagination or fantasy and fantasizing, and if you ask whether we think between fantasizing or we fantasize between thinking, it turns out that fantasy is more fundamental than realistic thought. And realistic thought we start learning and acquiring the skill of much later in life, but fantasy precedes. So fantasy is more fundamental than realistic thinking. Being in the zone of fantasy is more natural and fundamental to us more early in terms of life stage than to be in the zone of realistic thinking. And it, I believe personally, and many people believe, that we think between fantasizing and not fantasize between thinking. As age goes by, the proportion of fantasy reduces and the proportion of realistic thinking increases. But still, by and large, fantasy still constitutes a major part of the psychic activity, far greater in both quantity, depth, and quality compared to realistic thinking. So we are far more a Homo sapiens fantasies than Homo sapiens reality. Fantasy also happens in three different ways. One is daydreams or day fantasies. Second is night dreams. And third is unconscious fantasy, the fantasy that we write with PH instead of F. PHANTASY, fantasy with PH. And these are unconscious fantasies which don't even come up in dreams. And we are able to discover them only when we go deep in therapy. So fantasy is central to psychoanalysis because uh, we deal with fantasy as a point of genesis for pathology. We deal with fantasy in free association to strip the free association of fantasy and move towards reality acceptance. And we also deal with dream analysis, and we also try to discover the pH fantasy. So for psychoanalysis, this is central, stripping the whole expression in therapy out of fantasy, removing the fantasy from that expression and moving towards reality acceptance. One way of defining psychoanalysis is to say it is a science of reality acceptance. It's one way of defining, not the only way of defining, but that's one way of defining it. And this reality acceptance happens by a discovery, catharsis, and ultimately a movement towards integration and reality acceptance. So fantasy is very central to psychoanalysis, quite unlike other forms of therapy, which are centered around thought and realistic thinking and ego strength. Contrary to that, psychoanalysis in particular is centered around a few things, and fantasy happens to be one of those few centers.
Right. So, did Freud talk about the concept of central fantasy, and if who else with Freud did mention this?
Freud talked about a Freud did not talk about the concept of central fantasy. He talked about a concept of central masturbatory fantasy. So this concept of central fantasy is a development of Freud's concept, both in scope and depth, and this is something which I have coined. So Freud coined the term central masturbatory fantasy, and I have developed it to what I call central fantasy, the concept of central fantasy. Uh, Freud's idea was this. Freud used to say that if we look at the sexual fantasies of a person will have many sexual fantasies. Every person will have. But if you look at all those sexual fantasies, in most cases, you can uh, narrow them down to some central idea or a few central ideas. And most of the times, it is the one central idea. So let us say a person has sadistic sexual fantasies. Now, he has one fantasy where uh, he is beating up one woman. In another fantasy, he is beating up three women. In another fantasy, he may be beating up somebody in a homosexual situation, but there is beating up everywhere. So sadism is common to all the three areas. Similarly, uh, we can have others also, that other fantasies also, where we can see that there is one central element to the sexual fantasies. And Freud used to say that this central element is most evidently seen in one reoccurring fantasy. And that reoccurring fantasy may reoccur as it is or may reoccur with minor modifications, but there is some sexual fantasy that reoccurs in essence. And that reoccurrence of that fantasy is usually used by the person to get a sexual high, mostly in masturbation or even otherwise in the actual sexual life. And this fantasy, which reoccurs in different ways in the sexual world of the man or woman, is what Freud termed as central masturbatory fantasy. And for Freud, this was very important because of certain reasons. But this is what Freud said. Now, I have developed this concept to include non-sexual parts of the human nature. That why should we have central fantasy only in sexuality? Can we not have a central fantasy in the area of power, in the area of love, in the area of knowledge, and so on? So if we look at all the chakras, we can have a central fantasy related to every chakra, and we can have many fantasies associated with each chakra. In Western terms, if we have multiple motivations, and if sexuality is not the only motivation, then for every motivation we would have variety of fantasies, and for every motivation, I'm talking about elemental motivation, we can have a central fantasy. So I have developed this Freudian concept of central masturbatory fantasy to a more wide, deep concept of central fantasy, which is equally applicable to the whole of mind, whole of elemental motivations, not only to sexuality.
Right. So how do you define the concept of central fantasy then?
I take Freud's concept of central masturbatory fantasy and I uh, expand it to cover other areas of human psychic life. So I put this question, is sexuality the only desire? No, it is not the only desire. Are there not other desires equally strong or comparably strong? Yes, there are. So would there not be fantasies related to those desires? Of course, there would be. And if we try to find a center of collection of those desires related to one particular collection of those fantasies related to one particular desire, take for example desire for power. So if we take the desire for power and fame, fame would be one outcome of the desire for power. But if we take up the desire for power, then it is as strong, some would say even more strong than the sexual desire. So would there not be multitude of fantasies related to power? Would all of us not be dreaming about a multitude of power fantasies? Sometimes we may daydream that we are being felicitated with the Nobel Prize and everyone is impressed. Sometimes we may daydream that we have become the Prime Minister of India, or we may daydream that we have become the sports star of cricket or tennis, or a woman can daydream that she has become Miss Universe. Any kind of daydreaming is possible, and if there is an element of power or fame, then we have this collection of fantasies related to power and fame. And if we can sort of put together all these fantasies related to power and try to find their center, then just as we have central masturbatory fantasy, we would also have a central power fantasy. You can call it a central power fantasy or domination fantasy or whatever. Similarly, we can have a fantasy about love. We can have fantasy about survival and anger. We can have fantasies about creativity and art, about spirituality and knowledge. And all these domains, we can have multitude of fantasies related to one elemental desire. So the whole idea is, if we accept that sexuality is not the only elemental desire, but we are a multi-elementary desire system, then there would be multitude of fantasies related to every elemental desire, and there would be a central fantasy which we can deduce or we can find by literal reoccurrence of it with relation to every elemental desire. So if we have 7 chakras from an Indian standpoint, if we look at the human system and 7 centers of motivation, then each center would be associated with multitude of fantasies, and for each center there would be a central fantasy which we can deduce or we can literally find because of its reoccurrence. So this is the concept of central fantasy, which is a development of the concept of Freud's concept of central masturbatory fantasy.
Right. So why is it so important for one to explore the concept of central fantasy?
Uh, Freud gave a lot of importance to this, and it has stood the test of time, the significance of central masturbatory fantasy. Even today in ISTDP, when somebody is facing a sexual issue and is not able to recollect the Oedipal fantasies, then often even today we start with central masturbatory fantasy. And from there work our way backwards into the Oedipus or any issue that is related to sexuality, maybe even pre-Oedipal. So the significance of central masturbatory fantasy is very high even today. Now, once you develop Now, why is it so important? One is because the very fact that it reoccurs means you are fixated or entangled in it in some way. In your psychological life, something very important is associated there. And that is why it reoccurs again and again. So the sheer reoccurrence is a proof of concept of your strong fixation or entanglement. And of course, that needs to be worked upon, addressed, and be freed from. Because this kind of strong entanglement can't give you freedom. It can only give you compulsions. Second, uh, it tells us about the psychosexual structure of the personality. Where is the man fixated? The type of central masturbatory fantasy, the content of central masturbatory fantasy provides us an insight into the psychosexual developmental history of the individual and where he very strongly felt something or he was fixated or where he is entangled or stuck and can't move on. Third, it gives us a insight at times into the pathology of the person. It's not necessary that central masturbatory fantasy must be related to pathology, but often it is. And even if it is not, it gives us insight into the personality, which enables us better to get deeper into the pathology. Fourth, regardless of whether it is connected or not connected to the pathology for which the person is coming for therapy, we have to set the person free from it. And therefore, this has to be analyzed in psychoanalysis, regardless of whether it is connected or not connected to the pathology we are trying to heal. And lastly, uh, when we look at this central masturbatory fantasy, it can be a way to get into the uh, dream world of the person or the unconscious fantasies of the person, and free association from one can lead to the other, or occurrence of this uh, central masturbatory fantasy in dreams can become an occasion to get into unconscious fantasy. So this also becomes a helping tool to explore those deeper parts which have not yet come up. So the orientation of personality, at times the genesis of pathology, a strong fixation of the personality, entry into the unconscious, entry into the unconscious fantasies which have not come up even in dreams, all this becomes possible if we go deeper into central masturbatory fantasies. And most importantly, if we are dealing with something sexual, then this becomes almost the center, almost an inevitable uh, reflection point without which we can't really do much. So, in case anything is sexual, then this becomes a very good starting point and more often than not the center of therapy.
Right. So irrespective of any pathology, central fantasy gives us insight into a person's psyche. Is that how it is?
Yeah, it is true.
Okay. So, sir, do we have, you mentioned PH wala fantasy, and what exactly is that? And it has something to do with the central fantasy?
Yes, fantasies are of two types. One fantasy which we write with F, F-A-N-T-A-S-Y. And second category of fantasies is what we write as P-H-A-N-T-A-S-Y. The F fantasies are the fantasies which have come up in daydreams or night dreams. And the PH fantasies are the fantasies which have not come up even in night dreams. These are so deeply repressed and rooted that unless we go very deep in therapy and we are lucky, they don't come up. Of course, skill is required, but skill is not enough. You require large dose of luck for that thing to come up. So that is very important. Now, uh, what happens is, let us look at how the central fantasy concept ties up or relates to the PH fantasy. Let us look at it like this. Once you develop the concept of central masturbatory fantasy to central fantasy, right? You can have a fantasy world related to each elemental desire or each chakra, whatever way you want to put it. And therefore, there is one central fantasy for each chakra or each elemental motivation. Now, if you look at all these central fantasies, there might be some central fantasy which is more strong than others. Let us say you have one central fantasy, one person has one central fantasy related to sexuality, related to anger, related to power. And let us say for that person, the central fantasy related to power is stronger than central fantasy related to sexuality in terms of its strength and reoccurrence. So when we have one central fantasy related to each elemental desire or each chakra, then we are getting into a constellation of central fantasies. And the central masturbatory fantasy becomes one element of this constellation. And once we have this constellation in view, in front of us, it gives us quite a good idea about the personality. It's a very good exploratory tool, a multi-point exploratory tool into the personality. Now, when we come from this, when we start, we can easily go into the PH fantasy, the world of PH fantasy, which is much deeper and difficult to get into. Let us say, for example, we start with central masturbatory fantasy and we try to go deeper and we find some unconscious sexual fantasy in the unconscious mind. Similarly, we can start with the power fantasies and central power fantasy and go deeper and we find something in the unconscious mind which has never come up related to power. So what happens is that just as there is a world of fantasies related to each chakra and each elemental desire, right? In the non-PH world, in the PH world, we have a similar situation. There will be multitude of fantasies related to each elemental desire, each chakra. So we can visualize oversimplified way, in an oversimplified way like this. If these are the chakras here, let us say this is the spinal cord and these are the chakras on the spinal cord. And for each chakra, you have multitude of PH fantasies and one central PH fantasy. You have multitude of F fantasies and one central F fantasy. And if you join all the central F fantasies, you get one kind of figure. And if you join all the central PH fantasies, you get another kind of figure. And if we join the two figures, we get another set of insights. So there is a constellation of F fantasies. There is a constellation of PH fantasies. And when we join them and we look at them together, we get a very good picture of the personality. I am not saying we get everything related to the personality, but we get very important information related to the personality. And this is a tool, I think it is very innovative, very useful, something we should not miss. So this
Right.
how from central fantasies of the F type, we can get into central fantasies of the PH type.
Okay. Sir, and is there any correlation connection between central fantasy and archetypes?
Yes and no, because you created the concept of archetypes largely from the program of life concept. In the sense, not that it originated there, but that it sort of gets that internal consistency in the Jungian framework because it fits in very well with that program of life concept. So in some cases, it may be, for example, if somebody has a central fantasy of he sees in his dreams that he is a political leader and he is holding large rallies and these dreams reoccur. Or let us say he goes out as an explorer, Indiana Jones fantasy, and finds a treasure. let us say these are the kind of repeated fantasies one has. Then we can connect it to the archetypes and say it is rooted in the hero archetype. If one constantly gets the dream of being an army soldier or a general, defeating the enemy and being felicitated, one can say that the warrior archetype is very strong. Or one gets constantly a dream that he has supernatural powers and he is using them all the time or something of that sort. You can say the magician archetype is related, and we can say then that the reoccurring fantasy, you can call it a central fantasy or it can be just a normal fantasy which can still reoccur. It's not necessary only central fantasies reoccur. The most reoccurring and the strongest of reoccurring fantasies we call central fantasy, but other fantasies also can reoccur once or twice. So if, for example, this is a central fantasy, then we can say this central fantasy is rooted in warrior archetype or hero archetype. So you can say that the person is fixated or entangled in that archetype if the person is sick, or the person has strongest element in his personality of that archetype if the person is healthy. So this is the way we can link central fantasy with archetypes. But certain central fantasies are not so easy to link. For example, let us say somebody has a repetition of the Oedipal dream. Now, if the Oedipal dream reoccurs, literally or in the form of disguise, whatever be the form of the fantasy, one may see the Oedipal object literally or one may see the Oedipal object substituted because of dream world. Whatever be the case, let us say if the Oedipal fantasy reoccurs, then we can say the person is entangled or enmeshed in the maternal archetype and is struggling to get free. So let us say the person has this kind of a thing. Now, when we talk of being enmeshed or entangled in the maternal archetype, there can be 10 different types of entanglements, and Oedipal entanglement is only one of them. Say, for example, the person is not entangled Oedipally, but the person just has a very dominating mother and he is just not able to think independently and find his voice and take his decisions and live his life. Now, that person may have a dream that there is a very brave person who was swimming in the ocean, got caught by a octopus with many hands and legs, and the person is trying very ferociously to break free from the octopus. The person kills the octopus and breaks free. So that may be a manifestation of trying to break free from the all-consuming mother, the all-entangling, trapping mother. So in this case also we will say the person is entangled or enmeshed in the maternal archetype, trying to break free. Now in both cases, the archetypal expression is the same. You say the person is entangled or enmeshed in the maternal archetype, or you say the maternal archetype is overactive and the person has to free himself and deactivate the maternal archetype to the optimum zone. However, if you look closely at the two phenomena, they are very different. One is related to autonomy and the second is related to sexuality. So
Right. But in both, sorry. Yeah. In both the cases, there is Oedipal fixation, right?
Not in the sexual sense. There is maternal fixation, yes. But in one case, the maternal fixation is Oedipal and sexual. In the other case, it is more of an emotional and power dynamic fixation.
Okay.
And that is where the difficulty comes. That if these two very distinct phenomena you try to explain using archetypes, you get into confusion.
Okay.
And that is where what happens then is that the archetypal explanation will have to be sliced into many different things. For example, the sexual maternal preoccupation will have to be separated
From
from uh, uh, emotionally enmeshing maternal preoccupation, maternal enmeshment will have to be separated from the abandonment uh, maternal fixation related to abandonment. So there are varieties of ways in which the person can be enmeshed in the maternal archetype, and therefore, there in some cases, when we use the archetypal language, it gives us the broad picture but does not give us the specific details and real specific knowledge. And that falls short of where we should be. So in certain cases, we can use archetypal language and the archetypal concepts. In certain cases, it is better not to use it, because if we use it, then we have to go into uh, micro specification, okay, which qualifies the archetypal language and makes it more accurate.
right. It needs to be explored more than in that case.
Yeah, because we have to be more specific to be accurate. Otherwise, in the generality, two very different things will get unfortunately equated in some way
Mhm.
at the level of
Sir, and
contextual analysis.
right. And another thing, how can this central fantasy be resolved? And is there any specific time that it takes for, or of course, it depends on person to person. But
It's a good question, because uh, this is something which has not been explored adequately. I mean, the concept is a new concept, so there's no question of people having explored it in that structured way. In the course of very long therapy and analysis, each of these things automatically comes up. But a much efficient way is to do therapy in a structured way, at least for some people. And if it is not coming up by itself, then to intervene and give direction to the flow of things. Just as there is one specific use of psychotherapy, psychoanalytic psychotherapy approach, where they call it psychoanalytic therapy based only on dream analysis. So some people, not everyone, very few people use it, but there is an approach where uh, few sessions are dedicated only to doing psychoanalytic psychotherapy based on dream analysis. And some people go to the extent of doing it that the whole therapy is based only on dream analysis. That may be an extreme, but I would suggest that in normal ongoing therapy, if a few sessions can be structured only on dream analysis, and similarly, a few sessions can be structured only on central fantasy, it will provide us with direction and lot of efficiency. So this can be used to resolve the central fantasies. So the first thing which is necessary is appreciation of the fact that there is something called central fantasy. Two, dedicating a few sessions to central fantasies. And I'm sure when we dedicate the sessions, it is not difficult to go to the roots of central fantasies. If we have,
how do you go about it?
sorry,
How would a session be like when you focusing only on the central fantasy? It starts typically with the free association, or
yeah,
is it a guided one?
no, it starts, it can, you can have variety of formats. The common format
Mhm.
would be that we start the session by saying that today we will explore your sexual fantasies, or we will explore fantasies related to power, or fantasies related to anger. So it's a structured thing. And we can also tell this to the person that this is what we are going to do in the next session. So the person comes more
Yes,
prepared.
a semi-structured kind of.
Yeah. So then once we are dedicated to exploring fantasies related to one elemental desire,
Hmm.
and the fantasies start being narrated to us, and the person also
Hmm.
says that these fantasies happens only once these fantasies happen recurrently, and this fantasy is the most common. This is the central fantasy.
Okay. Yeah.
If the person doesn't know what is central fantasy, he tells us that the most common and the strongest is this, and then we label it as a central fantasy. So the first is to find out the fantasies related to any elemental, be it power, sexuality, or love, or whatever else. So you take up a elemental psychological desire, then create a collection of fantasies, arrive at the central fantasy, and then start exploring the central fantasy with free association and psychoanalytic knowledge, and take the person deeper into himself as to what are the roots of this central fantasy. And once you go there, you can see that the same roots might be spread out in many other things, other psychological activities. And then
Okay.
one by one, when you do this kind of thing, you can then do overall to find out that this central fantasy is actually the center of the center,
Right.
which is the strongest of all central fantasies. And that is the strongest central fantasy. And then one can look at the whole constellation of it. That how this, there is one strongest central fantasy, there are other central fantasies, and they form a constellation, and how it operates in life of the person. And what does it do to him? What are the profits? What are the losses? And how would the man like to manage this constellation in future? And then we can do the same thing for PH fantasies if the therapy is deep enough and if we can go there. And if the free association, but I would say first go into the F fantasy, complete it out, and only then try for PH fantasy.
So it's the simpler than the complex.
Yes.
Right. Sir, is there any spiritual interpretation to this central fantasy?
Yes, there is a philosophical interpretation and also a spiritual interpretation. The philosophic interpretation is this, that once we know central fantasies of people, and we know central fantasies of many people, it gives us an idea as to what nature is looking forward to. Because these central fantasies, by and large, are strongly influenced by constitutional factors. It is not only experience, and therefore there is an element of what nature wants, or how things happen in nature, at least, if not what nature wants. So once we have an insight into that, this can be a route into the metaphysical nature of reality, into what is the nature of reality and what is its purpose, trying to reflect upon it based upon what is happening in reality. So when we look at philosophy of the mind, in that particular area, this knowledge can be a detour or a route or a facilitating entity into the metaphysical nature of the mind and the metaphysical nature of reality. So that is about the philosophical aspect of it. The spiritual aspect of it goes into that these central fantasies, right, are somewhere related to three things. One is the karma, second is the self journey, and third is the spirit of the age, or the, the, the course of history of the human race, or the course of universe. And that is how spirituality links the psychological realities to karma, to journey of the self and the journey of the universe. And because that is a common thing, this entity also gets linked in that way. That you have particular kind of central fantasies, partly because of karmic reasons and partly because of your program of life, your soul journey. And part of it is because of the journey of the world or the journey of the universe.
The culture and the
Yeah, so that will get into the
collective conscious.
journey of the planet or universe.
Oh,
But
okay.
the most important thing for an individual is the linkage of these central fantasies, right, to the karmic thing and the journey of the self. This tells us about two things. One, what has the soul come to experience? And second, what are the compulsions of experiencing something out of the karmic load? And they will be reflected in both F fantasies and PH fantasies. And if you are unlucky, they are reflected more in the PH fantasies, which are more difficult to know. And you do things without less knowing them. And spirituality also offers a basket full of tools to make good use of these fantasies, quite unlike psychoanalysis and many of the Western sciences. There is no condescending attitude to fantasy. Instead, fantasy is taken as one element of subjective reality, just as reality is. I mean, the psychological reality's own functioning is. So,
Yeah.
spirituality is far more positive. Everything in human nature, good or not good, is used towards a spiritual purpose of self-knowing and self-transformation for good. And in the same way, central fantasy also is positively used for self-knowing, self-transformation, and spiritual progress.
Sir, are there any tools in spirituality to explore central fantasy, or it is very difficult?
There are tools. Meditation is one tool, particularly the meditation related to inward observation. So once you sit down, the fantasies come up. There is no way the fantasies can't come.
Yeah.
Then there are visualization exercises, imaginative exercises. Then there are, is a tantric tradition called Avishkar. Avishkar is uh, like psychodrama. You live out personality of somebody. So if first person X, whose personality would you like to live out? And when they do it, they actually put on the garments and they start using the language and they actually act out the whole thing like a full psychodrama.
Yes. Okay.
Guided by the guru, and it has a structure to give spiritual and psychological benefits, but it's fully acted out. So that tells us about what are the unconscious desires of the persons, what are the central fantasies. So if you are asked to do it for 1 year, once a month, and you choose particular kind of personalities to live out, it tells us about the unfulfilled desires or the central desires and central fantasies. Not only you know about them, you live them out and you also try to transcend them. So spirituality has many of these tools, including Reiki and pranic healing, to reduce the intensity, as well as for experiential tools like psychodrama. There are many other tools in Tantra and tools of visualization, often accompanied by mantra and mythology, as well as very importantly idol worship, because idol worship is such a vast area that you include visualization, mantra worship, mythology, psychodrama, relationship, virtual relationships, living out, and your central fantasies.
Yes.
There is a very big part of the psychological aspect of idol worship which is completely gone out of public knowledge and public discourse. But to my mind, idol worship, if done very well with the real scientific method, is a very powerful tool, very powerful method for many things, including resolution and freedom from central fantasy.
I think we need to have a series on that. Maybe next you can we can start with that. Well, I hope you enjoyed exploring central fantasy as much as I did. And thank you, sir. Thank you for all sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you. Namaste and take care.
Namaste.